beginning. This has been a 10-year ordeal for you.
Correct.
Why don't you tell us how you got into it in the first place?
So, thank you everyone for being here. So the man standing next to me was one of 3 people who started this project. So it was Dexter, myself, and Joe Tarsia. Sadly, as you saw, Joe left us, but he did get to see the film before he passed, and he really was, he loved it. But that's how the story started. I mean, for those of you who may not know, I spent a good part of my early career at Sigma Sound. Joe Tarsia and I became very good friends. And he would share a lot of really good stories about what took place in the 60s and 70s. And, you know, one day he told me the story of David Bowie coming in to cut Young Americans. And I just thought that was so different from every story that he shared with me up until that point. And I was like, wow. And I said, Joe, we gotta tell that story someday. So before we picked up a camera in 2015, Dexter and I, who have been working together for many years, he put together a sizzle reel with nothing. And that was enough to kind of get us started. And with that, I'm going to pass it off to Dexter.
All right.
I was you guys. I was the audience. I knew Sigma existed. I knew that some big hit records were made there. But I really didn't know a lot of the details. I didn't know many of the people involved. And so it was a real education for me to come on board and hear all these stories and find out all the stuff that happened that happened in the city I grew up in that I didn't know about. So it was a really interesting journey for me as well.
And as far as the making of the film, Dexter and I are both production professionals, so to start a project wasn't a terribly difficult thing to do. I mean, we had the infrastructure to do the filming, we had the infrastructure to start cutting together little segments, make sizzle reels. Then it became incredibly challenging to get to this point here to get a finished film.
You've got some big name executive producers on here. How'd you bring them in?
So there has been what do the Phillies or the Eagles say? Next man up. You know, with this project, there's been more than one next man up. The first one, he's not here. He'll be here Friday night. Was Bob Demento, who's an executive producer. He helped us get started. My very dear friend from St. Peter Celestine and Cherry Hill, Sean Connolly, was another next man up who kind of helped us get moving. But during the process, we had our shares of ups and downs, and one of them was we ran out of money, which happened a lot. But I thought at the time, you know, hey, what if we can get someone, a celebrity, Philadelphia, someone who had Philly ties to music, to attach themselves to our film. I think that would be a shot in the arm. And the very short story is our attorneys, Fox Rothschild, who really were very helpful with us, introduced us to Mike Jackson, who's a Philadelphia native. He's partners with John Legend. That's kind of how that one happened. But the next man up of the hour is right next to me right here with Amber. And then another one would be Dan DeLuca, who did a really nice cover on our film in the Philadelphia Inquirer. So I will encourage everyone to please tell your friends. There's a lot of tickets left for Friday night. So please, you know, we want to get as many people as we can out there.
Making documentaries is incredibly tough. Hours of footage, figuring out what goes in. As the editor and as the director, how did you piece this together and tell the story that you told?
Go ahead. So we knew there was no real clear arc to this film. You know, there wasn't a story and you follow it through the whole arc. So we knew as we were moving along that we were accumulating stories, and how do those stories connect like a jigsaw puzzle. But we also knew, you know, we needed to find a spine, something that we can attach everything to. And Sigma was obvious for us. I mean, it's obviously featured predominantly in the film. But we also knew that in order to have, you know, Act 1 was kind of obvious to us because it was a chronological film. Act 2 was very tricky. because there were so many things that we had to weave into the body of the film. But the Sigma Sound dedication ceremony just turned out to be the perfect ending for us, tied into the footage that we had of Joe walking through. So once we had those elements, we kind of, Dexter, who I'll pass it off to again, really was the man to make those elements turn into a story with the beginning, middle, and an end.
Yeah, it was, like Bill said, there was no clear chronological arc. So Nat Gutworth and I, who's the writer, kind of hunkered down for, quite a long time, piecing together an order of things that made sense. And then once we had the basic structure down, then Bill came in and tore it all apart. But I think it was a collaborative process, and I think we were skeptical at first that the reunion thing wouldn't be a big enough ending, but I think it turned out to be perfect, because the whole story was about the family that was created at Sigma Sound, and all the people that worked together that came from all walks of life from all over the city, and so to have them all back together again at the dedication, I think ended up being like the perfect ending.
Yeah, and Dexter was going there, but the humility of everyone. I don't know if anyone. I mean, the thing that was beautiful to me about putting this story together, I don't think anyone in the whole film really talked about themselves, like what I did. I mean, they talk about what they did. And Linda Creed, what she did, and Tommy Bell, what he did. Kenny Gamble. I mean, the day we got Kenny Gamble. So this is a funny story. So we really didn't know where we were going in the beginning, but I knew we had to have at least the 4 principals on camera, and that was Joe. He was going to be easy. Leon, Tommy, and Kenny that was a whole other story, because we had to ask them for permission. But the day Kenny agreed to be in our film, which was very, very early on in the process, gave us a phenomenal interview, and I knew we were on to something at that point. So everything was just kind of revealing itself through the course of making the film.
Great. Let's open for a couple questions. Go ahead.
All right.
What was your selection process for choosing which songs to use in the documentary? It's so great.
Boy. So there were certain must-haves, and there were certain would-likes, I would say. The funny thing about, and this kind of happened, and if anyone reads the Philadelphia Inquirer, they'll certainly get background on this. There's a funny thing that happens when you're making a music documentary and you're doing see and say. Like if you're hearing something, seeing it, it kind of turns into a Time Life CD collection.
Right.
Like the thing that became the priority was the story. So we let the stories drive the music. In some cases, we were able to use the song we wanted. In other cases, we weren't. But when we really went through what you guys saw, the finished product, we knew we had to have, like every 5 minutes, there had to be a song, that you recognize. Otherwise, I thought there would be a good chance we might lose you. And that was kind of our goal. And through the ending process, I'm going to ask, and only if someone doesn't know it. If you know it, please don't answer. Does anyone have any idea who was singing Philadelphia Freedom at the end? Who might not know? Like, take a guess. Like, you don't know, but take a guess.
Philadelphia Freedom?
At the end.
Elton John?
No.
Good guess. Who said Hall & Oates?
Right here. Billy.
Did you know, or?
I have it on my playlist.
So here's an example of picking a song, right? So we had a song that we were using for the end of the credits, and it just didn't work out for us. It was a good song, it was a playful song. It wasn't going to work out. So here, me and Dexter, we spent a lot of time in a 10 by 10 room staring at each other. And Dexter suggests, hey, how about Philadelphia Freedom? I'm like, yeah, Elton John recorded at Sigma. We could take some liberties there. And then we both agreed that song's been played to death, right? And then Dexter is on the computer as I'm like talking it out, and he goes, "Oh wow, Daryl Hall, he did a Google search. He recorded." I said, "What? What did you just say?" He said, "Daryl." I said, "That's better." I said, "We got to find it." So we found that song. Worked really hard. That song was so obscure we couldn't find the publisher for it. We eventually did, but we ran into so many times where publishers were finding us in the woodworks, and this was one where we couldn't find the publisher. So that's kind of an example. I hope that answers your question. In certain cases.
We can do two more. We'll do one and then two.
Great film.
Thank you.
What was the role of Al Roker?
So Al Roker, I have a call with in a couple hours. He's one of our executive producers. Al, it was funny. So we went after John Legend, but Al kind of heard about our project and approached us.
Wow.
I knew as the business side of this, because everything that you guys are seeing here, and we hope you like the film, there's still a gigantic business component that's left for the film. And that's selling the film and raising either the money. Can we start an auction? Starting bids at 100. Jim, is that you? I got 100 right there. Anybody? 200? 200 right there. 200. We need $1 million. We got 300. Lori Peruto. So basically Al is potentially he was the one who helped us out at one point. We had a deal with Peacock. Unfortunately, it didn't work out. He's interested in helping us again. He's an executive producer. Yep.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You said the main components, of course, were Joe Tarsia, Leon Huff, Kenny Gamble, Tom Bell.
Linda Creed.
And Linda, of course. And the way you put the music together was great, and I'm not criticizing it at all, but were you unable to get the music from Philadelphia International Records, all the great hits that they put out? Is there any of them?
Yeah, that's a good question, and it's a good observation. So in making a film, there's a few things going on. Number one, you're basically writing a book. That's what making a documentary film is. And then you're looking for assets that you can attach to your film. In the case of the music, there were cases where we were able to license music, and there were cases when we weren't.
Philly International didn't.
So no, it would be more the label that owns Philly International, so Warner, and that's their prerogative, and we have no control over that. So what we do have control over, they have their intellectual property, which I respect, and you can see in the film the admiration that I have for everyone in the film. But that's their intellectual property. For me, my intellectual property is the interviews, and that to me was the most valuable thing for making the film.
But it worked anyway.
Yes.
I'm in.
Thank you so much, Bill.